The twin suns burned above as Jack walked alone through the endless desert of the alien planet. His skin was dry, his lips cracked, and every step felt heavier than the last. He had been searching for lost ruins for weeks, hoping to find something valuable, or at least something to prove his journey wasn't a waste. His scanner was dead, his water pack was nearly empty, and his ship had been damaged in a sandstorm. Still, something inside him refused to give up. Just as Jack was ready to collapse, a strong wind rose, and a sandstorm began to form ahead of him. He covered his face and tried to move sideways, but then he saw a shape, a small figure standing in the storm, not moving, just watching him. As the sand blew harder, the figure raised a hand and pointed toward a dune. Jack squinted. Whoever it was wore a long dark cloak, and two glowing eyes stared at him from beneath the hood. He didn't know why, but he followed. The figure moved like wind, light and fast, always staying just far enough ahead that Jack could never catch up. They climbed a steep dune, and at the top, Jack finally saw what the figure wanted to show him. Below them, half buried in the sand, stood a massive stone pyramid, ancient and silent. Its top had broken off, and sand covered much of its surface, but strange symbols still glowed faintly along its walls. Jack gasped, his tiredness forgotten. The figure turned toward him and pulled back her hood. She was young, maybe Jack's age, but clearly alien. Her skin was light blue, her hair silver like moonlight, and her eyes glowed softly. She didn't speak, only tilted her head and looked at him as if expecting something. Then she pointed again, this time at the pyramid. Jack followed her down the dune, stumbling through the hot sand. When they reached the base of the pyramid, she knelt and brushed the sand aside. She uncovered a panel of stone, carved with the same glowing symbols as above. Then she picked up a stick and drew one of the symbols in the sand in front of Jack. He looked at the stone, then at the sand, and realized it matched. He slowly reached out and touched the symbol on the stone. The moment his fingers made contact, a deep hum filled the air. The ground shook, and the sand around them shifted as if alive. The girl stepped back quickly and looked at Jack with wide eyes, not of fear, but surprise. The symbol under his hand lit up brighter than the rest. A sudden crack echoed, and part of the stone wall slid open. Dust flew out, and a soft blue light glowed from within the dark doorway. Jack stared into the opening, unsure what he had just done. The girl walked to the door and stood beside it, waiting. She looked at him and gave a small nod. Jack hesitated, then stepped inside. The air was cooler within, and the walls were covered with strange glowing lines and carvings. It felt more like a machine than a building. The floor pulsed softly under his boots, almost like it was alive. Behind him, the alien girl followed silently. She reached out and touched the wall, and suddenly the symbols changed color. The lights along the path grew brighter, showing the way deeper into the pyramid. Jack looked at her, and for the first time, she spoke, her voice quiet and soft. "You're not the first human to come here," she said slowly. Jack's heart skipped. "How do you know English?" he asked, his voice echoing in the chamber. She paused, her fingers still on the wall. "I learned it," she said, "from the voices in here." Jack stepped closer to the wall and saw tiny moving images, holograms of people. Some were alien, but some were human, dressed in armor and robes, standing beside aliens like her. One of them looked just like him. Jack froze, staring at the hologram. It couldn't be real. But the girl looked at him again, more serious now. "You woke it," she said. "It only opens for one of your kind." The humming grew louder, and the ground beneath them shook again. Far below, a rumble echoed up through the pyramid's core. Jack looked at the glowing path ahead, unsure whether to go forward or run, but his curiosity burned stronger than his fear. He turned to the girl, who simply nodded again. Together, they walked deeper into the pyramid. Behind them, the door closed slowly, sealing them inside with ancient secrets and forgotten power. Whatever was waiting ahead, it had just begun. Jack's boots echoed as he walked deeper into the glowing corridor. The walls beside him were smooth but warm, pulsing like a heartbeat. The light was soft and blue. Yet it came from no clear source. Behind him, the alien girl moved quietly, her eyes scanning everything. She wasn't scared, but her silence held a weight that Jack could feel. As they turned a corner, the hallway opened into a round chamber. The moment Jack stepped in, something changed. The lights flickered. Then the air around them shimmered like heat rising off sand. Suddenly, images began to appear floating in the air all around him. Holograms, soft and flickering, as if showing old memories. Jack stood still, surrounded by scenes from another time. Alien cities filled with towers and lights. Strange creatures flying between spires. Aliens worked beside humans, men and women, dressed in strange armor. Some looked like soldiers, others like scientists. Their faces showed no fear, only purpose and unity. Jack turned slowly. Watching the images dance around him, he reached out, and one of the glowing figures turned to face him. It looked human, with dark hair and eyes full of fire. He wore silver armor and a strange circular emblem on his chest. The man raised his hand toward Jack, then the image faded. Jack stepped back, his breath shallow. What is this?" he asked softly. The alien girl stood near the wall, her hand resting on a set of glowing circles. She didn't answer immediately. The room pulsed again, and more images filled the air. This time faster, sharper. Scenes of war flashed, now machines firing. Skies burning, people screaming, dark shadows covered cities, and a giant black structure floated above them all. Jack's stomach turned as he saw the same human man from before. His armor cracked, his body bloody. The man fell on one knee, then looked up as if staring directly at Jack again. Then everything went dark. The lights faded, and silence returned to the room. Jack stood frozen, his mind spinning. The girl finally spoke, her voice barely louder than a whisper. "These are memories," she said, "from the pyramid's mind." Jack turned to her, eyebrows furrowed. "Why do they show humans?" he asked. The girl looked at the floor before answering. "Because your kind was part of this long ago," she said. "You helped build these places, fight wars, save us." Jack shook his head slowly, confused. "That's impossible," he said. "Humans never came here before me." The girl looked up, her eyes glowing gently. "Time forgets," she said, "but the pyramid remembers." She walked to the center of the chamber and touched the floor. More symbols lit up, and the ground opened like petals. From the center rose a small platform, and on it a metal device with a glowing center. Jack stepped closer, drawn to it like a moth to flame. The moment his fingers touched the device, the room brightened again. This time only one image appeared clearer than the rest. A human man stood tall, surrounded by aliens who knelt before him. The man raised a staff and spoke words Jack couldn't understand. But in the image, the alien girl beside him looked exactly like the one standing beside Jack now. He blinked in disbelief. "Is that you?" he asked. The girl didn't answer, but the look in her eyes said yes. "How?" Jack whispered. "I was created," she said slowly, "by those who survive, to wait for your kind to return." Jack's mouth went dry. "For how long?" She looked up at the ceiling, as if searching the stars above. "Thousands of your years," she said. "I've waited here, asleep, until you opened the door." Jack stared at the hologram again, then at the device in his hand. "What is this thing?" he asked. "A key," she said. "And a test." Jack's grip tightened around it. The walls pulsed again, and a voice echoed through the chamber. Not male, not female. Human signal confirmed. It said, "Initiating sequence." The floor shook gently, and a new passage opened in the far wall. The girl turned to him, her expression unreadable. "This part I've never seen before," she said, almost afraid. Jack looked into the darkness beyond the new door. He could feel something waiting for him there. Not evil, not good, just ancient. Something made by hands like his, or something meant only for him. He stepped forward, heart pounding, and the girl followed without a word behind them. The memory chamber faded, and the holograms disappeared like smoke. The air grew colder as they entered the next hallway. The light dimmed, the silence deepened, and Jack knew whatever was ahead, it would change everything he believed about history, and everything he believed about himself. The air inside the new corridor was colder, but it wasn't just the temperature, it felt ancient. Jack's breath came out in soft clouds. Even though the planet's surface had been boiling hot, the walls were no longer smooth like before. They were cracked, layered with dust, and covered in strange carvings. The alien girl said nothing as she walked beside him, but her hands stayed close to the walls, her fingers brushing the markings with care. It was clear now she didn't know this part of the pyramid either. At the end of the corridor, they entered a tall chamber shaped like a dome. Jack's eyes widened as he stepped inside. Floating stones hovered silently in midair, slowly spinning. In place, some were small like pebbles, others large enough to block the path forward. Each one was carved with a glowing symbol different from what he had seen before. In the center of the dome stood a black pedestal. It had a shallow bowl on top, filled with shimmering sand that shifted like liquid. The moment Jack stepped toward it, the floating stones began to move. They turned toward him as if watching, and a low hum filled the air again. The alien girl grabbed his arm, her voice low and tense. "This is the trial room," she whispered. "Only the chosen can pass it." Jack glanced at her. Then back at the pedestal, the sand inside began to swirl faster, forming images that matched the symbols on the stones. Before he could ask what to do, the voice returned. "Begin the pattern, human," it said, "or the sequence will fail." Suddenly, a timer appeared in the air counting down from 60. Wait, what am I supposed to do?" Jack said quickly, his heart racing. The alien girl stepped back, watching in silence. Jack looked around, symbols spinning, glowing, some pulsing faster than others. Then he remembered the ones on the walls, the ones she had traced with her fingers. He closed his eyes and tried to remember the order she had touched them. Triangle, circle, wave, star, square. He reached out and touched the floating stone with the triangle symbol. It moved toward him, glowing brighter, then floated. Aside, Jack smiled faintly. He was right. He touched the circle next, same reaction. Then the wave, then the star. But when he touched the last stone, the square, nothing happened. The timer dropped quickly, 20 seconds remaining. Then the stones began to spin faster, the air shaking. Jack panicked and stepped back. "I messed up," he said. "I don't know the last one." The girl stepped forward now and placed her hand over his. She moved it gently toward a different stone, a spiral symbol. "This one," she whispered. "It means balance." Jack trusted her and touched it. The stone glowed bright golden, and all the others suddenly stopped spinning. The hum grew into a sharp tone, then silenced. The timer froze at 1 second, then vanished. The floating stones slowly returned to their places, peaceful once more. The pedestal lit up, and the sand inside it began to rise, forming a shape. Jack watched as the grains took form, a map, not just of the pyramid, but of the entire region. It showed underground tunnels, more pyramids hidden under the sands, and at the center something massive, pulsing red, buried deep below. Jack stepped back as the image zoomed in, showing a large, sealed chamber far beneath their feet. A label blinked above it in the alien language, but then it translated slowly. "Heart of the machine." The girl looked at it, her face pale. "This is what they sealed away," she said, her voice shaking. Jack frowned. "What is it?" She didn't answer at first, only looked at him. "My people built the pyramids to trap something powerful," she said finally. "But they failed, and only one key was made to reach it." Jack looked down at the device in his hand. "The key from earlier. Why me?" he asked quietly. "Because only a human can enter the heart safely," she replied. Jack didn't like the sound of that. "But what happens if I do?" he asked. She turned toward the exit of the chamber, her voice barely a whisper. "Either you stop what's sleeping down there," she said, "or it wakes up and ends everything." The map disappeared, and the floor beneath them opened like a spiral staircase. Leading down into darkness, Jack stared into it, the silence pressing down on him like a weight. He had come to this planet looking for ruins, history, and maybe a story to tell. Now he had found something that could destroy worlds. He tightened his grip on the key, glanced at the alien girl. She nodded once, her eyes glowing softly in the shadows. Jack took a deep breath and stepped onto the stairs. One step at a time, into the unknown, into the deep heart of the ancient machine. The staircase went down forever. Each step echoed in the darkness, as if the pyramid itself was listening. Jack felt the air grow heavier with every breath, like something ancient was pressing against his chest. The alien girl walked behind him, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dim blue light. She didn't speak, but he could feel her fear growing. They finally reached the bottom, a huge round door blocking the path forward. It was covered in metal. Veins that pulsed slowly, like they were alive. A circle in the center of the door glowed the same color as the key in Jack's hand. Without thinking, he stepped forward and pressed the key into the circle. The door let out a deep sigh, like it hadn't opened in 1,000 years. A slow rumble began, and the door slid open with a hiss of cold air. Jack stepped inside first, and then stopped completely. In the middle of the massive room stood a crystal, taller than a tree, glowing with soft golden light. But it wasn't the crystal that shocked him, it was the woman inside it. Frozen in time, her body still, her eyes closed, wearing a crown made of starlight. The alien girl walked in slowly, and the moment she saw the figure inside, she fell to her knees. Jack turned to her, surprised. "You know her?" he asked quietly. The girl nodded, her voice trembling. "She is the queen," she said. "Our last hope, our protector. Our failure." Jack looked back at the crystal, unsure if he was looking at a person or a memory. Suddenly the room darkened, and a beam of light shot down from the ceiling. A voice began to speak, not with sound, but directly into his mind, soft at first, but growing clearer with every word. "If you are hearing this, then I am no longer alive," the voice said. Jack blinked, trying to stay calm. The voice was calm, full of sorrow, but strong. "I am Queen Saralai of the Arathi." The voice continued, "My people built these pyramids not to rule, but to protect." Images began to appear in the air, cities falling, skies turning black, machines going wild. A creature made of shadow and fire rising from the depths, destroying everything in its path. "We tried to stop it," the queen's voice said, "but it could not be killed, only sealed." Jack watched as the alien army tried to hold back the monster. He saw flashes of human warriors fighting beside them. One of them wore armor, just like the image from before. And at the center of the battle, the queen raised her hands, and the crystal formed around her. "A final spell," the voice said, "to trap myself and the key in time." The alien girl looked up at the crystal, tears in her eyes. "I was created after she vanished," she whispered, "to wait, to find someone like you." Jack stepped closer to the crystal, watching as the queen's hand twitched slightly. Wait, was she moving? A crack formed in the glowing surface, spreading slowly. Jack stumbled back as the light grew stronger. The key in his hand burned hot, then floated from his palm toward the crystal. It pressed into the surface, and with a loud shatter, the crystal broke open. The queen fell forward, landing gently as if the air itself had caught her. She opened her eyes slowly, deep gold, filled with centuries of pain. Jack froze, unable to speak. The queen looked around the room, then at the alien girl. "You," she said softly. "You are my daughter." The girl gasped, covering her mouth with both hands. "I was never born," she said. "I was made from your memory." The queen nodded slowly, her voice sad but proud. "Then you are still mine," she said, reaching out to touch her face. Jack watched the moment, stunned. But the light behind them began to flicker violently. A red glow pulsed through the walls, and the queen's face hardened. "It's waking," she said. Standing tall again, Jack stepped forward. Heart pounding. "What is waking?" he asked. The queen looked into his eyes, and for a moment, Jack felt like she saw everything inside him. "The shadow engine," she said. "The enemy we sealed long ago. But it is hungry, and your touch broke the final lock." A deep sound echoed from below the chamber, like metal grinding against the bones of the world. The floor shook, dust falling from the ceiling. The queen reached out and placed her hand on Jack's chest. "You were chosen, not because you are strong," she said, "but because you have the heart of one who protects. Will you help me stop what's coming?" Jack looked at her, then at the girl beside him, and then toward the rising heat and sound behind the walls. He nodded slowly, his voice quiet but firm. "Yes," he said. "Whatever it is, we'll stop it together." The queen smiled for the first time, and the walls around them split open to reveal a path deeper than any they had seen so far. This time, they weren't just exploring ruins. They were heading straight into war. The walls peeled apart like ancient stone giving way to breath. From the opening came a sound so low, so deep, that Jack felt it in his bones before he heard it in his ears. It wasn't just noise, it was a heartbeat, slow, massive, and wrong. Something buried far below was alive, and it had just started to wake up. The queen didn't hesitate. She stepped into the new passage with her long silver cloak trailing behind. The alien girl followed her, still shaken by the truth of her creation. Jack hesitated, his fingers brushing the wall as he looked down into the flickering red light. The air smelled different now, like burnt metal and ash. He took a breath and moved forward, knowing there was no turning back. The path led to a deep chamber far beneath the surface. There were no carvings here, no beauty, just thick dark walls pulsing with red veins of light. At the center stood a black machine shaped like a twisted tree. Its roots spread across the floor, sinking into the stone, and above, a massive sphere floated, swirling with shadows and broken voices. Jack felt dizzy just looking at it. It was like a dream trying to take form. The queen raised her hand and spoke in her native tongue, sharp, echoing words that made the very air shiver. But the sphere didn't stop spinning. It responded with a voice like a storm behind a door. "Human," it said, "you bring your weakness here." Jack stepped back as the floor beneath him pulsed. The machine seemed to grow larger, feeding on his fear. But the queen stood tall, her voice strong. "You have no power over him," she said. "He carries the key and the will." The machine responded with laughter, a sound like knives scraping metal. "I fed on the stars," it hissed. "I drank suns and cracked planets." Jack felt the heat rise around him, his skin sweating under the weight of the thing's presence. He turned to the queen. "What do we do?" She looked at him and placed the last piece of the key into his hand. "This engine is not alive," she said. "It's a ghost. A hungry machine built from madness." "Then why does it sound like it's thinking?" Jack asked. "Because we gave it thoughts long ago," she replied. "And now it thinks it's a god." The alien girl stepped closer, eyes glowing bright. "If it escapes this chamber, it will find the other's machine sleeping across the stars." Jack looked at the spinning sphere, watching it shift between shapes. A face formed for a moment, his own face. Twisted in shadow, it was trying to break him. He gritted his teeth and raised the key. Light exploded from the device, and the room howled. The sphere collapsed inward, like it had been stabbed, but instead of dying, it screamed. From the black tree machine, arms of dark matter shot out, reaching for Jack. He dodged the first strike, barely, as the queen called out. Spell in her native voice. A golden shield formed around Jack, but it was cracking fast. "Now!" the queen shouted. "Strike its heart." Jack ran toward the base of the machine, the key pulsing like fire in his grip. He leapt over roots, dodging claws of shadow. One swipe caught his side, tearing fabric and burning flesh, but he kept moving, heart pounding louder than the machine. Itself, at the base, a small pulsing core shone red and black. Like a dying star, Jack raised the key, and for a moment, everything slowed. He saw the alien girl's face, her mouth open in fear. He saw the Queen's hands glowing bright, holding the shield as long as she could. He saw the machine's heart looking right at him, and he drove the key into it. A scream shattered the air high, wild, endless. The floor broke apart, and the entire chamber shook violently. The Queen grabbed the girl, pulling her back. Jack stood in the middle as the light consumed the machine from inside. The sphere exploded into dust. The roots cracked. The shadows pulled back like smoke in a storm. Then silence. The only sound was Jack's breathing. Slow and heavy, he dropped to one knee, holding his side where the wound still burned. The Queen walked over and placed her hand on his shoulder. "You have done what no one else could," she said. Jack looked up, barely able to speak. "Is it over?" The Queen looked at the cracks in the walls, then shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "This was only one engine." Jack stood, wobbling slightly. "How many more?" The alien girl stepped beside him, her face calm but serious. "There are 6 others," she said, "buried across different worlds." Jack exhaled, almost laughing. "Of course there are," he muttered. The Queen looked at both of them and gave a rare smile. "But now we're not alone," she said. "Now we have a human again." Jack nodded slowly, the weight of the journey settling in. They left the broken chamber behind, walking up into the fading light. Not as strangers anymore, but as something else, something stronger, and above them, far away in the stars. Other engines began to stir. The sandstorm outside had vanished when they came out of the pyramid. But the sky above had changed color, no longer gold, but a dull gray. It wasn't the clouds or the time of day. It was the aftershock of something ancient being disturbed. Jack could feel it in the wind, in the silence, in the way the desert held its breath. He limped slightly, still wounded from the machine's final strike. But even pain couldn't stop his thoughts now. The Queen had told him there were 6 more engines across different planets, and only someone with the key and the will could face them, but she hadn't told him what would happen to him along the way. That night, they camped near the edge of the pyramid's shadow. Jack sat alone while the alien girl slept. The Queen stayed silent nearby, staring at the stars. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "There is something you must wear before we leave this world." Jack looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" She stood and pointed to a narrow ridge beyond the dunes. "The first guardian's tomb is buried beneath that rock," she said. "And his gift waits for the one who walks the same path." Jack stood slowly, not knowing what to expect, but knowing he had no choice. They walked in silence across the desert, the air cool and dry. The Queen moved her hand over the stone. Whispering in her language, the sand began to slide away, revealing a square stone door. It opened on its own, as if it recognized her voice. Inside was darkness, calm, still, ancient. Jack stepped in first, the Queen close behind. The passage led into a wide chamber, lit only by faint blue flames. At the center stood a statue, tall, powerful, shaped like a human, and resting on its chest, floating slightly in the air, was a set of armor unlike anything Jack had ever seen. It shimmered like polished obsidian, but it breathed like something alive. As Jack stepped closer, the air grew warm. The armor turned toward him, not with motion, but with presence. It was watching him, sensing him. The Queen placed her hand on his shoulder. This armor was made by human hands. "Thousands of years ago," she said. "Forged in fire, tempered in memory." Jack reached out slowly, his fingers brushing the chest plate. The armor reacted instantly, snapping forward and wrapping around him like liquid steel. He gasped, falling to one knee as heat surged through his body, his vision blurred. Memories not his own flashing through his mind, battles, stars burning, shouts in alien languages. He saw himself, but older, stronger, standing before armies. Then it stopped. The armor locked into place, silent, sleek, and perfect. It didn't weigh him down, it moved with him, like it had always been part of him. He looked at his hands, now covered in corrode metal that glowed faintly from the inside. The queen nodded in approval. "It fits," she said. "You are now the bearer of the ancient will." Jack stood up, feeling strength flow through his limbs. His wounds no longer burned, even the scar on his side had faded beneath the armor's touch. "What is this made of?" he asked quietly. The queen stepped back, her face solemn. "Memory," she said. "Sacrifice and stardust." Jack didn't fully understand, but he felt something different in his chest now, not just power, but a purpose that stretched far beyond himself. The armor had chosen him, just as the pyramid had. Suddenly, the flames around the chamber turned red. The walls shook slightly, and a voice, not like before but closer, whispered from the shadows. "They are watching," it said. "They know the armor has returned." Jack spun around, fists clenched, ready for an attack, but nothing came. The queen's eyes narrowed. "The other engines," she said. "They felt the armor awaken. Then we just made ourselves a target," Jack said, tightening his grip. The queen gave a grim nod. "Yes, and they will come quickly." They left the tomb behind, and as the door sealed again, the wind began to rise. But Jack didn't feel small anymore. He had faced one engine, and now wore the armor of the first warrior. He wasn't just part of the past, he was its continuation. And the war that once ended in silence had started again in him. As they stood under the alien stars, the armor pulsed softly. A signal reached out from it, invisible but undeniable. In deep space, far from that world, machines turned, sensors flickered, and cold eyes opened. The human was alive, and this time he would not fight alone. It began with silence, a strange, heavy silence that spread across the skies of distant worlds. Then the stars blinked one by one, as if something unseen was moving between them. In hidden corners of the galaxy, forgotten machines opened their eyes. The engines of shadow had heard the call. Jack stood at the edge of the canyon, his new armor glowing faintly against the rising twin suns. The alien girl stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the sky. The queen knelt on the ground, her hands pressed into the sand, whispering words too old for time. She was listening to signals, to changes, to memories buried in the stars. "They are coming," she said at last. "Faster than we expected." Ships rose from the sand behind them, ancient but still alive. 6 in total, each one from a different time. A different species, warriors, guardians, outcasts answering the same signal. They had all been waiting for the same thing. A human in the armor of the first protector. Jack turned to them, unsure if he was ready to lead. But none of them doubted him, not after what he had done. The girl placed something in his hand, a small glowing crystal. "It's a map," she said. "It will guide us to the second engine." Jack nodded, his jaw tight. But before they could take off, the ground trembled. The canyon ahead cracked open, and a black shape rose from beneath. It wasn't a full engine. It was something smaller, but fast and alive, a hunter, sent ahead to destroy him before he reached the next world. Its body shimmered like smoke. Trapped inside glass, Jack stepped forward, his armor reacting instantly. He felt the heat of the threat, the pull of the machine's hunger. He raised his hand, and a blade of light grew from his wrist. The others stood back, watching, knowing this was not their fight. This one belonged to Jack alone. The hunter lunged, moving faster than anything Jack had faced. But the armor moved with him, reading his mind, guiding his limbs. Metal clashed with light. Shadows danced across the desert. Each strike felt like thunder. Each breath burned in his chest. But he did not step back. He remembered the queen's words. "You were not chosen because you are perfect," she had said. "You were chosen because you stand back up when all others fall." Jack drove his blade deep into the center of the hunter, and with one final scream, the machine exploded into dust. The canyon fell quiet again, but not for long. Above them, signals lit the sky. Streaks of fire falling from orbit. They were no longer hiding. The enemy knew Jack was coming. "They're sending more," the alien girl said, her voice calm but sharp. Jack turned toward the rising ships, his armor humming with energy. "We go now," he said. "We stop them before they wake the others." The Queen stepped beside him, her crown of light shimmering softly. "You will face things you were never meant to see," she warned. "I already have," Jack replied. "And I'm still here." One by one, the ships lifted off, carrying warriors from the past into a future that would burn. Jack's ship rose last, climbing toward the sky that had once ignored humanity. Now it would remember. He stood at the front, watching stars pass, feeling the weight of history on his back. But he did not feel alone. The alien girl stood beside him, quiet but steady. Others watched him with silent respect, waiting for orders. He wasn't just a symbol now, he was hope. And every machine that stirred in the dark knew it. Ahead, the second engine pulsed faintly on a dead moon. And beyond that, 5 more waited in silence. But Jack no longer feared them. He carried something the enemy could never create. He carried belief, not just in ancient armor or lost memories, but in the strength of a stubborn heart, one that chose to protect, one that chose to fight, and one that would never give up. The stars waited quietly, but not for long, because the human was coming. And this time, he would finish what the first warriors started.